Hey YouTube, it's Aisha, and this is my long-awaited February 1st through the 10th wrap up. So I have a few books for you this week. I did really well with my wrap up, and I'm really excited about what I read. So the first thing I read was Maiden Flight by Bianca D'Arc. This is book one in the Dragon Knight series. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. It started off really kind of corny, and then as you got into the story, the world built, and it kind of went into a direction that I want to follow. The first few pages, the young woman is hunting. She is pouching in the king's forest. Out comes a dragon, steals her hunt, and then when she starts to argue with him, the dragons are part of a knight duo, where it's a knight and a dragon that fight in the king's army. And she, screams at the dragon, and he's like, "Well, you have to bring this up to the knight, who is going to get the kill." And we go from there. It does build into a fantastic story, and she lays down really good world building and opens up a lot of places for us to go from there. I have a few things that really annoyed me about the world. It seemed like a world where they have a different kind of way they set up relationships and the way things are done. And then at the same time, she would bring in calling women whores, or wondering if she's a slut, or if something's wrong. Like, if this is a kind of normal world, why is that in there? I don't know. It felt kind of odd and off-putting. So it dropped it down from 4 stars to 3.5, maybe 3. Next, I read Baby Be Mine by Emily McKay. This is one of the oldest romance books on my shelf. I have 2 other books that are on my shelves that are older than this. This is on my shelf for 15 years. This came out when I was in college in 2004. 13 years. 2004. Is it 2002 or 2000? I think it's 2002. I used to be a part of the Harlequin book readers service, so they would mail you a box of books every month, and you just kind of go through it and read everything. You paid $15. It was a really good service, and then he canceled it. I really wish they would bring it back. I got a lot of really good books that way. But this is one of the ones that was sitting on my shelf for a while, and I finally said, you know what, I'm going to pick it up and read it. And I picked it up, and I gave it 3 stars. I think if I had read it when I was younger, I might have let it slide more, because I would have been a little bit more optimistic and a little less world weary. There is a quote in here where he says, "I know you really well. I know that you vote Republican every single election." And I was like, yep, that's why she's a dummy. She has her moments. So this character here, she is a really stuck in the mud, and she knows it. She acknowledges it, young woman, and she's made her life this way because of how she was brought up. She decides that she's going to live a certain way, which means she's going to find a stable husband, have a stable job. Nothing wrong with that, but the way she's going about it, it clearly is boring to her and not inspiring and not happy. So it's clearly not making her happy, but she's going to do it because it's the exact opposite of her upbringing. And she picks the guy that she thinks is stable. He comes from money. He's got a job. He's got a 401k. And then homeboy finds out she's married, and he splits. One of the things I didn't like about her was her insistence that somehow you being a single parent means you've done something wrong. And I get in her case, there was a reason. Her mom was just childish. But people end up being single parents for many, many reasons. You end up as a single parent because I have a friend whose husband literally left for work and dropped dead on the way. She didn't plan to be a single mom, but she ended up being so. I have friends who are military wives. One who ended up being, excuse me, a military widow. Didn't plan on being a single mom. I have friends who ended up divorcing because they're just not compatible, and they don't want their kids to grow up in that environment. people get divorced or split for several reasons, and she's just in this very childish mentality of, maybe if you were better, you wouldn't have been alone. Like, bitch, please. So like that kind of annoyed me about her. As well as her, I get like it's such a drastic change, that a lot of women don't deal with it well. Finding out she was pregnant, she tried to ignore it. She tried to pretend it wasn't happening. She didn't acknowledge it to her family. She didn't acknowledge it to her friends. And after a while, I was like, okay, well, you're a whole grown ass woman and you're talking about being mature and being responsible, and you're not acknowledging your pregnancy. That's not mature. So I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. A good reason why it ended up being 3.5 stars instead of 1 star is the male character. The male character is way better than she is. And I don't really normally have that thing. I normally fall in love with the women way more than I do with the men. And I'm always like, the women are better than the guys, or they deserve each other. They're perfect together. He deserves better. Like, he does have a few moments where he does stupid stuff, but she, from the very beginning, is just whine, 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 whine. Why is my life like this? So I gave her 3.5 stars only because the male character saved it. She has some friends that I love, but at the same time, they don't know what boundaries are, and they kept stepping over them, kept ignoring her boundaries. Not a fan of that. So yeah, 3.5. Next, to pick myself up, this was my random.org pick, which I'm really glad I did finally read this. This has been on my shelf for a little over a year. And this is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Now I freaking understand why everybody loves her and why Ugly Love was so big, not just on BookTube for a little while, but really on the blogs, on Instagram, on Twitter, why it's quoted so much. I now understand. And despite all of that, I managed to go into this book knowing only 2 things. There was a pilot, and he was a guy. That's it. I was not spoiled, and I'm very glad for that. I really went into this completely blind, and I absolutely love it. This way of telling the story was very beautiful. I loved her way of telling the story, and I think I'm going to enjoy reading the rest of her catalog. I have quite a few of her books. I didn't realize how many books of hers I had, but I've been collecting her for a while, and I'm very glad I read this. I'm very glad random.org picked this one for me. It actually picked an Abby Glines book, but that Abby Glines book is book 7 in the series, so I went ahead and put the book next to it, which just happened to be this. So yeah, so really enjoyed this. This is my first 5-star read for the year. I gave it 5 stars because in reading it, I kept getting that anxious feeling that you get when your characters are going to be put in danger, and that nervousness you get when you're afraid of what the next page is going to bring. And I was at work and I just kept wanting to just go on break so I could read. We actually ended up getting a snowstorm the next day, and I finished this on the 9th. I love this. Really enjoyed it. The ending just grabbed me, and I totally see why people love her now. This is Ugly Love was totally worth it. Totally beautiful. 5 freaking stars. Next, I read Tomas Cowboy Homecoming, and this is by Linda Warren. This I got at my very first BEA. This is so bad. I'm only just now reading it. It just fell through the cracks. It's one of those that fell through the cracks. It ended up on that bookshelf. No. So the bookshelf directly behind me right there with all the mass market. And it kind of got hidden somewhere in there. And so yeah, it ended up on that bookshelf and it got hidden in there, and it was just impossible to find. But I went through and picked out all the small books, and I was like, I'm going to read through these. I'm going to pick from these. And this was my number 11 pick. Because it was number 11. So I went through and lined them all up and counted 11, and this was it. I really enjoyed this one. I gave this 3.5 stars, 3.5 really good stars. This one is a second chance romance. When this couple was younger, they let pride and fear, and but this is a second chance romance, and I'm really glad I got to read this. I gave this 3.5 really good stars. I really enjoyed this one. I laughed a lot when I read this, and I was like, this is really cute. This is how you write a romance story, because she managed to pack a full year into this short book. And it's a second chance romance. They let pride and family drama keep them from getting together. And then as they grew up and their lives fell apart, they came back to their hometown. And it happened to be at the same time. And they ran into each other. And it's just from there. It is a really good cowboy romance. And it talks a lot about the rodeo. It really touches on PTSD from the military. He is a Marine who really went through a really bad patch right before he came home. And he decided not to come home. He hid out for 2 years and to kind of deal with his problems. And I'm really glad that she was very therapy positive in this book. So I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. Probably would move it up to 4. Because of the way she handled PTSD, not just for the military man, but for the family. She talked about it from the perspective of a woman married to a Marine dealing with PTSD who did not deal with it properly. And I really love the two stories and the meshing of the two families coming together. The really cute kids in the story really make the story. I really just love the way their families are. I definitely added all the other family members' stories onto my TBR pile, which is why this pile never goes down. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Definitely a 4-star read. I'm bumping it up to 4 stars. So definitely a 4-star read. Tomas, Cowboy Homecoming by Linda Warren. And that was the final book. Nope, it's not. Next, I read Ritual in Death by J.D. Robb. So this is the Unquiet anthology with Mary Blaney, Patricia Gaffney, Ruth Ryan Lanigan, and Mary Kay McComas. I only picked it up for J.D. Robb, and I literally only read it for J.D. Robb. This is where I can find these novellas, so that is what I'm going to do. I borrowed this from the library, and I have to return it, and I'm very glad that I got to read it. Ritual in Death, I gave 4 stars. I really loved it. I laughed reading this. It felt like it's such a comfortable way to slide back into the Rourke and Eve Dallas world. It is so easy to slide back in. This one was 27.5, I think. Was this Ritual? Oh no, this one is Chaos. I also read Chaos. But Chaos in Death is 37.5. And this is Ritual in Death. This is Suite 606 by J.D. Robb, along with the same ladies that are in Unquiet. So I actually finished Unquiet the next day, so it doesn't quite count. But I'll count it. I finished this on the 11th, so I'll count it for the 10 days. It's cheating, but you know, I've already mentioned it, so I might as well. So these were novellas 27.5 and 33.5, I think. So one is Ritual in Death and the other one is Chaos in Death. Chaos in Death, I will have to say, I did not guess the character. But I love the little retelling that it is. If you read the story, it is such a fun and quirky retelling. Didn't see that one coming. And then the Suite 606 is Ritual in Death. This one, you get to meet a character from another story that she's used before. Isis is back in this one. And we get to see Rourke really explore his beliefs beyond Eve. You know, he very much has that Irish belief in things that cannot be seen, whereas Eve has to see things. And even when she sees things, because she sees some things in this, she doesn't believe it because it's not explainable. It's not tangible for her. But I really loved coming back into the story. I really loved seeing Eve, Dallas, and Rourke. Her name is Eve Dallas. It's one name. Eve Dallas and Rourke. I really loved that one. This one is right after New York. No, this one, Chaos and Death, is right after New York and Dallas, which I was okay with, but I have my feelings expressed about New York to Dallas somewhere else. But yeah, this one was such a quirky retelling, and I did not expect it. It really was kind of unquiet. I did not expect that. And I really loved Suite 606. So yeah, Ritual in Death, getting to see Isis again and getting to explore a little more in Eve's world. And this makes it easier to jump back into the bigger books, the big novels. So 4-star reads for both of them. And there you have it. Yay! So from the 1st to the 10th, officially the 11th, I read 2, 4, 5, 6 books. Yay! That's not bad. So yes, and I'm in the middle of like 5. I swear. I just pick books up and start them. But yes, so 2 from the library and the rest from my bookshelf. None of them newly purchased. So see you guys next week, running from the 11th to the 21st. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.